Okay, good afternoon. Welcome everyone. Super excited today to welcome Katie. Katie, is it Yamashita?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was perfect.
Yay, got it. Okay. So Katie is the head of sales for Go2. She's a pro at connecting clients with teammates who help them handle their customer service and back office operations. She honed her craft as the head of customer experience for VEGAMOUR, which is a clean beauty startup, where she saw firsthand, all of the logistical hurdles and things like that that many e-commerce businesses face. So she has like a real, love for wanting to help other e-commerce businesses succeed. Today, she's going to discuss where to find your customer experience person, how to interview and recruit them, onboard them using lean startup style, and then build out in the role for scale. So we're super excited for her to share all the tricks of the trade. General like housekeeping, if anyone has any questions throughout, we can like pause throughout if more people join, Katie. But otherwise, like I'll just keep an eye on the chat box down at the bottom, and also like people can raise their hand and I can unmute them.
I love it. That sounds great.
Yeah, take it away. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Thank you for joining, and thank you to anybody that is watching and hopefully eating lunch at the same time. That's what I used to do with webinars. So I am super stoked to talk to you guys today. I will share my screen because I am a rambler, and if I don't, I won't stay on track. So can you guys all see this? Okay. My cute presentation, amazing. So yeah, what I wanted to talk about today with you guys is hiring somebody to help out with your customer service and then setting yourself up for success so that you can scale that thing up as you grow without it being a huge pain. So yeah, my agenda is really simple. I'm gonna start by talking about what we do, a little bit about where you can find a person, interviewing and hiring them, especially if you have no experience, like doing frontline interviews and it's not fun. So I'm going to talk about that, and then prepping and training your person, and then just getting set up to have systems that scale up with you. So that's it. That's my agenda. So just super briefly, Leslie did a great job of introducing me. The only thing I would add to that is that like part of my journey, I started out in cable call centers and really unsexy frontline environments like that. I went to this little beauty startup to head up their customer experience, thought it would be easier, hiring frontline, being at a cute startup, and found out that it absolutely was not any easier than hiring for a really aggressive call center. And so as part of my struggle, I actually ended up partnering with Go2 as a client. And I was a client for a few years, and then I ended up joining the team over here because I had such a positive experience. And so I've now been at Go2 for, my God, two years now. So that's kind of how I got where I am. What we do at Go2 is we work with small to medium-sized businesses to not only supply them with frontline teammates that help with customer service, back office, executive assistant stuff, but we also provide co-management. So our kind of sweet spot is working with people who have a need for frontline support, but like don't have the time or the bandwidth to really do all the work of managing those people. And so that's why we provide the co-management, so you can focus on the stuff that's important to you. We provide that kind of manager wingman support, and then just setting up systems so that like it's really easy to grow and scale. So the stuff I'll talk about today are some of our best practices for setting people up for success, making things easy, and then managing a frontline team when like that's not the thing that you're really excited about or that you specialize in. So first things first, where do you even find a person, right? Like when you're trying to hire somebody to help you with your customer support, where do you even get that person? So I made this table for you guys because as I was thinking through like all the options, I wanted to organize it in some sort of way. So you do have a lot of options when it comes to getting a customer service person. What people usually think of first is just hiring locally, right? Like putting an ad on Craigslist or AngelList or whatever, and just hiring somebody like you would normally hire. That is absolutely an option. A new option that I think people are considering more and more in the last year is hiring remotely. So still hiring somebody directly, but maybe doing it through weworkremotely.com, or, you know, because then you, like, I'm in Los Angeles and man, our minimum wage here is high. So you have a few more options, right? If you hire remotely, but still yourself. You can also go through Upwork, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it's a platform where you could hire someone in the Philippines, you could hire someone in El Salvador, you could hire someone offshore, pay them even less. You could pay somebody $3 an hour to do your customer service, and that is an option that some people go with. You could use a shared service, which is, there are a lot of them out there. The most common idea of a shared service is like an answering service, right? Where you pay a company to, when your phone rings, they answer it. They don't know anything about your product, but like they can have a nice friendly voice, pick up the phone, right? And they have that for email, for chat. There are companies like Work or Simpler who offer similar things, where, you know, you can have your tickets answered by a team. And that's a great option for some people. And then the last option is having a dedicated teammate. And this is what we do. So I'm a little biased towards it, but I'll give you the breakdown of the pros and cons of each of them. But you could have a dedicated teammate. So working with a partner like us, or there are others out there like Support Ninja or TaskUs, where you have a dedicated person that works only with you. And then you have a system that also supports you. So I'm just going to kind of blast through these. So hiring
really quickly, Katie, just a question. So the hiring locally, that's just like someone who will be on your team.
Yes, that would be like your traditional, like, I'm just going to hire somebody to work with me. Maybe they're part-time, maybe they're a college kid.
Got it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, please keep interrupting me whenever. I love interruptions. So yeah, hiring locally is just hiring somebody locally, right? Like you pay them however, you figure it out. It can be cost effective because sometimes you have people that, like, you know, want to work part-time or whatever. So you have some flexibility there. It's not super scalable, but it is nice in that you have somebody who only works for you, right? You don't necessarily have to do a bunch of prep work to get ready for them. They can kind of just start and you guys can figure stuff out together, right? Because you're in the same room. And like, but then the bummer is like, you are the boss in that case, right? Like you do have to be the manager. So that's your hiring locally option. Hiring remotely is really similar. I would say that, like, the only difference between hiring locally and hiring remotely is that you would have to prep a little bit. It's harder to have somebody show up on a Zoom call on their first day and like you guys figure things out together. So if you're super organized, that's probably a great option for you. But between the two, I would say hiring locally is probably a little bit easier if you do just need somebody to get in there and figure things out with you. Going on Upwork or a similar job board, right, where you can take advantage of the global marketplace is incredibly cost effective. You really can get somebody for $3 an hour to do your customer service tickets. And I've talked to clients who found people that they love on Upwork, and they have an amazing relationship. They have this person, they are super dedicated to them.
Yeah, I'm surprised by the dedication piece. I would love to hear more about that, but you can touch on that at the end.
Yeah, I will. No, absolutely. And the dedicated support really comes up when we talk about shared service and what the difference is there. But you know, hiring somebody on Upwork is going to be similar to hiring in person, right? In that you're going to have to go through the interview process yourself, right? You have to interview people. You have to figure out if they're a good fit for you. And then you are responsible for their day-to-day, for their training, for their management, all of that stuff. But you are going to need to also prepare and manage that person. One thing that I will say, just all these three options, right, are you actually being the boss and the manager. I'll share with you my personal stats from when I was at VEGAMOUR and I was hiring a customer service person. And sadly, I did it so often that I had it down to a science. So when I posted a job for a customer service rep, I would have to go through 150 applications. in order to, I had a Google form and this whole screening process I would do. 50 people would fill out my Google form. About 20 would end up doing a phone screen with me. And based on that, I would interview probably 3 people in person to end up with one person that didn't even really have like the right experience. They had the right attitude. Like they had been customer facing before. They probably had not used Shopify or any CRMs before, but I felt like they had the right attitude.
Can I interrupt you for just a second?
Yeah.
So we have Daniel. I'm actually going to unmute him right now, but he's just asking how much time that required.
The interview stuff?
The process from the time that you got all of the responses in on the Google sheet, vetted them, got down to the 20, then the 3 and the 1.
So I'm actually pretty proud of my process, to be honest with you. So my exact process I would send everybody the same email when they applied, and I would have them fill out a Google form, and then based on that, I would move them to a phone screen. I would say it probably took 40 hours over a period of 2 weeks to go through all of that.
Okay, thank you.
It killed my productivity for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. I have another question about the Google sheet, but this may not be the time for it, so we can.
I mean, you ask it if you want. I'm happy to send it over too.
Okay, I'd love to see it. I'm just wondering, do you think the effectiveness of the Google sheet of the form was because of the type of candidate you were sourcing, or do you think that's an effective strategy like across the board for any industry?
So the reason that I use the Google sheet is because the thing about frontline roles, right, is it's kind of a dime a dozen, right? Both on the frontline person side and the employer side. So a lot of people are just applying for every customer service job that they see. They don't care about me or my job or my company or that, we're special. They're just applying for all of them. And so the reason I used the Google form was because it helped me weed out people who were just spraying and praying and didn't actually care about my company or what I was doing. And so that's why I used it. I think anytime you are hiring for a role where there's just going to be an incredible volume of people and you're trying to identify people who are actually interested versus just treating you as another application, it's a good best practice. And then for customer service, the questions I was asking on the Google form would be like, hey, what do you know about our company? And, why do you want to work here? And tell me about like a really tough customer interaction that you had. Like those were really my 3 basic questions. And that was just for me to gauge how much time did you spend on the website, right? Like, how are your writing skills? And yeah, did you take the time? That's all I'm looking for on the form.
Okay, that sounds like an asynchronous phone screen, almost like a real easy way for you to be able to ask this question. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I did. So my next step after that was a phone screen. So like, I would do a phone screen. I used Calendly. I used email and I said, pick a time on the calendar and you call me. And that was another efficient way that I was able to, move through a lot of people at once because some people just wouldn't call and that's okay. But then I would do a phone screen. And then if the phone screen went well, I would give them a written assignment where they would answer questions and, fill out stuff that would require them to research. And then if they did great on that, then I would bring them in for the final interview. So that was my process.
Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. That was really a burning question. So thank you.
I love interruptions.
Katie, I also was, before we move to the next one, would love to hear more about, I would say it's maybe falls under like dedication or prep for this one, but like how it felt working with people, and especially in customer service, like if mistakes were made or, like how much ownership like a company would give to whoever they hired through Upwork. Like if they felt, I'm just imagining like if let's say they email a customer and the customer is furious by something that this person said that doesn't even work for the company itself. Like how did like that dynamic play in with like disgruntled, customers?
Oh my gosh. So these are actually really different answers depending on where you're getting your people from. So I would say offshore in general, a lot of the people that are on Upwork that we work with, right, have worked for bigger companies where they're really locked into rules. They're used to like, these are the processes that you follow. And if somebody is mad, this is what you do. They don't have a ton of autonomy, right?
Yeah.
And so part of your training should be like, hey, I want to give you the context so that you can make a good decision, or you can tell me when like you think that my process doesn't make sense, if that makes sense. So like there should be a lot of expectation setting around like, listen, we're a smaller business, right? Like we need to evolve. And so like, here's what's important to me about the customer experience. Here's what's important to me about, you know, our products and our brands. And here's the processes that I have, but I want you to like raise your hand and speak up if you think that like we should make an exception for this person. And so if you're working with somebody offshore, it's really important that you set that expectation. Otherwise, you may end up having somebody sound like a robot, right? Because they're just going to follow the process no matter what. When you hire within the US, you're going to get sometimes somebody has those same habits, and other times you have people who feel really, really comfortable, you know, taking that autonomy. And so it really depends. And one thing I'll talk about later is like expectation setting around, you know, what is the role? How are you guys going to work together? Because like how much freedom somebody feels like they have in talking to your customers is probably something that you want to get really calibrated on before that comes up.
Cool.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, those three options, locally, remotely, and then going through Upwork, are all, you know, options where you would own that hiring process. And I'll talk a little bit later about my best practices around choosing somebody and interviewing them. I want to talk about the other two options down here, and I'm just going to pop them both in there because you'll notice that these guys don't require you to be as much of a manager. You can exist as you are and focus on your brand and your voice and the things that are important to you, and you have a partner that is going to help you to manage that frontline staff. So as far as costs go, shared services can be very cheap, and they can also be really, really expensive. They really like run the gamut in terms of cost. Both are really scalable because you are not relying on your personal machine to post the job, interview the people, et cetera, right? You have a partner who does this all the time. So they're both really scalable options. The biggest difference between a shared service and then a dedicated service is who is working with you. So one of the things, like when I work with brands who have a really particular brand voice, right? Like sometimes brands have really funny like voices, right? Or they're playful, or they have a particular way they want to talk to their customers, or they have a really, I don't want to say complex product, but like one that like requires a lot of product knowledge, right? Like I come from a brand where we made hair restoration products for primarily women, but they were vegan products. And with vegan products, you get a lot of questions about, is this ingredient really vegan? And will this work for me? And what if I have an allergic reaction? And those are more complicated answers than just like, does this come in red, or when will this ship? And so for a lot of those, the longer somebody works with you, right, the more they're going to learn and more institutional knowledge they're going to gain. And that's where having somebody that is dedicated to your account, right, and only works with you can be really helpful. Whereas in the shared service, sometimes they're cheap, sometimes they're not cheap, like I said, but like you have a team of people and any one person may be working on your account at any given time, if that makes sense. So like, if your product's really simple, right? If you're selling widgets, or you're selling something where you don't have to answer kind of nuanced questions about stuff, a shared service could be a really great option. Because what you do for those services is you basically do a bunch of prep work. And you say, hey, here are the questions we're going to get. Here are the answers that I want to give. Here are some FAQs. You do have to do a good bit of prep work in terms of process documentation and product knowledge. But you do have the flexibility of being able to scale up really easily, scale back. And you have a team of people that are always going to be answering your questions. They can be limited sometimes in the tools that they'll use, But like I said, if you kind of have a not super crazily nuanced product, like they can be a really, really great fit. And so those are kind of all of the options that you have available in terms of hiring. I'll pause before I move on to my next thing in case anybody has any questions about where you can get people from. All right, well, I will keep going. Please feel free to interrupt me if the spirit moves you. So interviewing and choosing a person. So when I talk to clients, a lot of times they get really nervous about interviewing people because they're like, I've never interviewed a customer service person. What do I ask? And my recommendation is always like, don't go Google questions to ask a customer service person. You should just play to your strengths and set expectations accordingly. So when you're a small business, when you're a small team, the most important thing of anything is just being able to communicate and being able to work together. And whether that person has a ton of customer service experience or they don't, isn't necessarily a really great indicator of if they're going to be a good customer service person for you. And I can tell you that having interviewed hundreds of customer service reps in my life, sometimes people who had a lot of customer service experience were actually pretty terrible because they'd been doing that job so long, they were kind of jaded, right? And they had been carrying around all of that baggage of bad policies and people being mean to them. And so that's why I say don't even worry about experience. Don't worry about that stuff. What you do want to do, though, is use your interview time as an opportunity to practice working together. So what I would do if I was interviewing, I would start by setting expectations with my interviewee and saying, hey, listen, I really just want to see if we're going to be able to work together. So I am going to, give you some homework to research and check out so you can be set up for success. And what we're going to do in the interview is do a role play, right? Where you can be you and I'll be a customer, and we'll see how you do it answering those questions, whether it's in a chat or live. And then I'm going to give you some feedback and then see if you can do it better the next time. Because that's what your relationship is going to be, right? Like they're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to give them feedback. And the way that they receive and process that feedback is going to determine how good your relationship is and how successful they are in their role. So that is what I would do in an interview. Give them the website. If you have blogs or YouTubes, like send them some links and say, hey, listen, during the interview, I'm going to, let's do a chat role play. I'm going to ask you some questions and pretend to be a customer. And that's so check out these things beforehand. And then during the interview, don't try to trick them, right? Be one of those top 3 questions that customers ask, right? Keep it simple. And what you want to do after you do one role play is give them some feedback and say, hey, the way that you talked about this product is actually not correct, right? Like you want to say it like this. Or, if somebody asks about this, that's actually a huge upsell opportunity. Here's how I would position it. Give them some sort of constructive feedback and then do it again. That's it. That's all I would do in that interview, is just practice you guys working together. That is going to be the most important thing that you can do. And then lastly, especially if you're interviewing locally or, hiring somebody remotely, I would ask about their expectations and timeline. One of the most common things that happens, especially in startups, people use customer service roles as a stepping stone, right? So I might join a startup if I'm just out of college because I really want to work with the startup and I want to go move into the marketing department, or I'm seeing this as an opportunity to go somewhere else. And what you don't want to happen is you guys not talk about that and then realize 6 months down the line, that person's unhappy because they're not seeing the growth that they wanted. You should just have that conversation. What are your expectations? What is your timeline? Tell them your expectations and timeline so that you guys can plan accordingly and just be on the same page. So that is that. In terms of prepping and training, this is my favorite piece of advice. So as you're getting ready for your person, as long as you're doing anything except a shared service. If you're doing a shared service, you do have to make process documentation, but anything else, I always recommend against making process documentation. It is a huge time suck. And if you're like most of my clients,
I pause you for just a second
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, we have someone who's raised their hand. Just a second.
Oh,
All right, go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you. I had a question about your advice on hiring someone that might actually only be interested in the like a 6-month timeline.
yeah.
Good candidate, right? Could do the role for 6 months. Is it practical to think that we can hire this person on, possibly hire their replacement, have them train them and prep this person for another role? Is that unreasonable?
No.
Okay.
If you have that type of growth, absolutely not. The thing that most people run into is that like that person, you know, does that job for 6 months, really expected to be promoted by then, but like there is no marketing position. Or I say marketing because that was my personal experience.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? I have some baggage myself. Yeah, what happens is like if that role isn't available, then you're in this kind of uncomfortable area. But like if you expect there to be growth or if there is growth, yes, they should absolutely train that replacement 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Anything else, or can I keep rolling on
I think we
my
keep rolling.
my anti-process documentation? It just gets outdated really quickly, right? So like I don't see any. It's a time suck, and it can be tough. What I do recommend that you do as you're getting ready, and even if you're thinking of customer service help as a far in the distant future thing, a thing that you can start doing now is just start using screen recording software. Like Loom is my favorite personal one that I have. Start recording yourself whenever you're doing tickets, whenever you are having a conversation with somebody about how they should talk about the product. It could be even a phone call with an influencer, right? Explaining to them the product and the brand. Just start recording that stuff and create a little library. Make sure that you're naming things in a way that's organized and makes sense, but just start recording and squirreling those things away. And then the last thing is, as you're getting ready for this person, as it's closer to the actual time, create a self-paced onboarding so that your person gets in the habit of working independently and then asking for help when they need it. Like you want your onboarding to model the relationship that you're going to have with this person. And hopefully you don't have to hold their hand through everything, right? And tell them how to do everything. You want to create that like expectation that they're going to do research and they're going to figure things out. And then they're going to ask for help or advice when it makes sense to. And so you want to mirror that in your onboarding. And I have an example of what that might look like. This is just a sample. Like meet your person in the morning, hang out, plan lunch, do whatever for 30 minutes, right? Just get to know them. Spend 15 minutes reviewing the directions for their independent work. And then here's how you might break it down, right? Like for the next 4 hours, read everything you can on the website, YouTube, blog, competitor sites, Trustpilot, and then give them a little assignment, right? So in doing all this research, I want you to find the top 3 questions people ask. I want you to write down all the questions you have, right? And think about who, based on what you're reading, do you think our customers are and what's important to them? So give them some sort of structure, but give them some independent work. And then set aside some focused time for you and your person to really go over that work. Again, give feedback, troubleshoot, record that thing so you can save it for your next hire. And then give them a second assignment, right? So now that you kind of understand the product, let's get into the tickets. So if you're in a CRM, great, have them go back through the CRM tickets. If you're just using Gmail or Outlook, that's also fine. Have them go back and read the last 50 to 75 tickets. Identify the most common tickets and maybe craft their own responses. But have some sort of like independent work and then formal check-in opportunity. Because like giving people frequent critical feedback is going to be the best thing to get you guys on the same page.
I really like to, like when you mentioned before with using Loom and things like that, because these are things that, as you know, mentioned earlier, a lot of our companies at Saltbox are like 1 to 2 employees. They're kind of doing it all themselves. So it's not really creating more work. You kind of just will build this into the processes that you're already doing so that when you hire someone new to take on the customer service stuff, it's kind of like it's built in already. You know what I mean?
It's
There's not
already
a
there,
lot of
yeah.
extra work with the onboarding and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when I do it, I will probably take 5% more time than normal because I'll kind of talk through why I'm doing stuff. And
Right.
that's exactly what you want to do, right? Invest a teeny little bit more time, just providing the context, talking out loud. If you mess up, that's fine too. Like these things don't have to be perfect. They should just be what you do today. And yeah, the idea is to not create extra work for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course it's like a little extra time, but it's not like days and days and days of like putting together, you know, a playbook or something like that.
Oh my God, yes. And for me, when I put together playbooks, it's also the procrastination because like I also don't want to do that. So there's that too.
Yeah.
So last section is just about building for scale because like I know the first person can feel like a lot, but like if you do well, you're going to need a second person and a third person. And so you want to set yourself up for success so that as you're investing in that first person, you're going to be able to use all those investments later on. So stuff that we do, we just encourage our clients to work with their person organically and use technology to capture all of those moments, right? Like I love Loom, it's my favorite. One recommendation I have for everybody is to, you know, and I know everyone doesn't love making videos of themselves, but you do get desensitized. So, you know, if you start now, it'll be okay. But make a video of yourself explaining how you got into your business, what's important to you, all that's like, make that, invest 20 minutes in making that recording. That's going to be a great piece of onboarding content. And then you don't have to repeat it over and over. And then if somebody watches that, you can actually have a conversation about that instead of just kind of like, you know, spewing up the same thing over and over again. Record meetings that you guys have when you're reviewing tickets, giving feedback. I love Google Meet has this new feature, right, where you can just record right in the thing. So convenient. So use that, right? And then if you're using Slack or any sort of messaging system, one thing that we do is like we encourage our teammates to, you know, ask questions in Slack. Hey, this is this ticket. How do I talk about this product? Or I don't know what the answer to this question is. And then our clients will pop in there, right? They'll either answer the question or say, hey, here's what you can say. And then we set up zaps so that if the client or the teammate is like, ooh, this would be a good FAQ, they just click on the little button, send it to a document, Zapier. And then part of this person's job every single week is when the tickets are low, right? Or when there's some extra time is to go back through that document, add some tags, make it filterable, right? So again, nobody's making an FAQ. We're just taking advantage of those moments where you're answering questions and doing work you would do anyway to really capture that, put it in a process doc, and then all we're doing is cleaning it up. So it's not process doc creation, it's just kind of like cleaning up the stuff that we're doing anyway. And so capturing those moments, whether it's through video or through Zaps, build in time for your person to organize all that information, organize those videos that you've made, you know, clean up those FAQs, make sure you prioritize that, because if you do a couple hours a week, that will get you the process documentation that you need to be able to grow and scale. And it shouldn't be a huge ton of work. So that's it. Those were all the things that I wanted to tell you guys. So I'll hand it back to Leslie for questions or anything else.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Let's see, Daniel has another question, and then I was also gonna ask you after if you could go into a little bit more specifics about GoTo.
Yeah.
I love that you did a more general way for people to think about things. That was like, no, it was really awesome for you to bring your expertise in that way. But I would love to also know if anyone, especially since we'll be keeping this video for future, you know, whoever, just if anyone would want to work with GoTo in the future, like how, just high level overview of how that would work. So let me start with Daniel and then we can get to that.
Cool.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Thank you. I know
Daniel.
I'm back again, but do you notice any difficulty? I know your hiring strategy might include people from all over the country, or I mean, globally even, right? Because you have a dispersed workforce and that's technology enabled. Do you notice that your candidates come primarily from a certain region, or do you have difficulty ever sourcing local candidates or people to work in person? I'm just interested in your hiring challenges based on region, whether or not there are different strategies for different metropolitan areas.
Yeah, so no, that's a really good question. So we actually only do offshore. We don't do any candidates from North America.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That's not true. Wait, US and Canada. We don't do US and Canada. We have our biggest area that we source from is the Philippines.
Okay.
We also have candidates in El Salvador, Bolivia, India. The reason Philippines is the biggest for us is the quality of English is pretty phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
People learn English as children. I have talked to many of my teammates' children who sound amazing.
Yeah.
So English is really great.
And didn't y'all just expand to Argentina as well?
We don't do we have some staff in Argentina, but we don't source a ton from Argentina. Yes, no, that's a super good question. As far as, so I would say that the biggest difference in terms of like local challenges is, look, I live in Los Angeles. The average customer service job in Los Angeles pays $15 an hour, and it's incredibly hard to live on $15 an hour. And what that means is that like customer service doesn't exist as a career path in the same way that it does in other countries, if that makes sense. So you can pay $15 an hour in LA and get somebody who could probably make more as a waitress or a waiter or a server, right? Or you can hire in countries where like that same rate would get you somebody who has been a senior director of operations, right? And run a 1,000-person call center. And so there are different levels of professionalism. There's different levels of seriousness. I have had only positive experiences hiring offshore, which is part of why I joined GoTo, is because for me, it was like, oh my God, this is so much easier. But I think the challenges with hiring within the US really are around like, what does that career path look like? Can you be competitive in terms of rate for those people who are really great? And do they want to do that job for the long term? But I would say like for us, the Philippines, El Salvador have been really amazing in terms of sourcing.
Got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think those three, the career path, the competitive wage, and do they want to be there? Like that's instructive advice for the situation we're in. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. I love the question. So I guess that's a really good segue, right, into like what GoTo does. So we like I said, we work with a ton of e-commerce companies. We also work with all sorts of small to medium-sized businesses. And what we do is provide dedicated staff. So our clients will say, hey, I need a customer service person for my e-commerce, or I'm dying, I need an executive assistant. And what we do is we start by sourcing for candidates that match that profile. We give our clients an opportunity to review those profiles, to meet all of the candidates. They get to hop on a candidate selection call, which is a call just like this. It's kind of like speed dating for interviews. You hop on, it's 45 minutes, you meet everybody, you show up ready to party. We do all of the customer service qualifying and all of that like intimidating interview stuff. So you guys just show up ready to party, have a good time, pick the person that is right for you.
Yeah. I love that piece of it. When we initially spoke, I love how you said like, when you get to that stage, it's really about making sure that they're a good, fit, like with personality wise and all of that, and culture fit and all of that. Also, I dropped the link to the company in the group chat if anyone wants to go and find it there. Sorry, go on.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah, like so for us interviewing, instead of that 40 hours, right, that we talked about, it's 45 minutes. You pick your person, we'll connect you guys in Slack. We'll set up a shared Slack channel. We provide a bunch of reporting. And then the most important piece though, is we provide a success manager. And the success manager is your manager wingman. So like your job is to show up and to give feedback and to say when we suck and tell us what we need to change. Your job is not to figure out how to do it. It's just to show up and speak your mind and invest in your people. And your success manager is there they're kind of a communications coach to make sure that you and your person are communicating well. You guys are on the same page. They're also going to do career pathing and have biweekly one-on-ones with your teammate. I know that my one-on-ones they're the first thing I kick off the calendar when I'm overwhelmed. And so your success manager is there to make sure that your person's engaged. They don't feel forgotten about. And so that's kind of what we do. And our focus is really on high quality teammates. We tend to target people who have been in leadership roles and work for really great companies. And we pay them more and ask them if they want to work with cool startups. And then I think the last thing that's really important for us is that career pathing for our teammates is the most important thing to us, meaning that if somebody goes on your account, they kick ass and they're doing great, they max out all the raises with us. After a year and a half, we'll come to you and say, hey, is there an opportunity for this person to take on more responsibility? Maybe add a little bit to the invoice so we can pass completely on to that person. So you guys then have more control over what that relationship looks like. And if you say yes, we'll put together a plan. And if you say no, we'll find you a replacement and give your person an opportunity to continue to grow their career. Because the people that we are sourcing want to grow their careers, right? They want to move into leadership roles. They want to do that stuff. And so we create opportunities for them to do that, while also getting you guys some amazing people that can really contribute and help you grow your business. So that's kind of what we do. Pricing is easy. We're a flat monthly fee. Starts at $17.80 a month for a full-time teammate, and it's month to month. So that's it. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I love how transparent it is. That was the other thing we talked about, is that a lot of times, you start out small and it feels really affordable. And then all of a sudden you're like 2 months in, there's all these new fees and and you're like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh gosh, I have to add all these other things on in order to continue with the service or the level of service that I want. So that's great.
Yeah, we're easy. No startup fees. No, it's like, that's literally the price. We don't charge you until you pick your person. So you can go through that whole candidate selection process. And if you don't find anybody, that's okay. It doesn't happen very often, but we only want to work with you if you want to work with us.
Yeah. And the best way to, engage there is just to go through the website and fill out that form.
Yeah, or they can, here, I'll put my email in there. They can actually just email me directly, because the form will just go to me. So if you just want to email me, you can do that. I'm happy to have like a more specific conversation about your situation, give you more advice, totally fine. Shoot me an email. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Are there any final questions for Katie from anyone on the call? All righty. I think we're good to go.
Well, thanks so much. Thank you, Leslie. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you. That was awesome. I really enjoyed it. And I know this will be super helpful for a lot of our members. So thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Take care.